folks who have come along to hear a little bit more about Literacy Pittsburgh, where I work. I wanted to say a big thank you to Pastor Ben for inviting me here this evening and for doing a whole lot to kind of establish a connection between Literacy Pittsburgh and the Northmont United Presbyterian Church. I'm really grateful to have that connection started over the last few months, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future as well. So let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. Okay. A quick introduction. My name is Katie Critchfield. I'm the program coordinator for the North Hills at Literacy Pittsburgh. So Literacy Pittsburgh covers a big region in Allegheny County and Beaver County. And one of the ways that we try to embed our services in the communities that we are serving is to have area coordinators working all throughout the city and the greater Pittsburgh region. So I cover the North Hills. It's a pretty large area. It goes kind of all the way up past Sewickley up to Wexford, and then all the way out to like Kittanning in the east. So it is a large area. My office is in Glenshaw, but I'm often kind of traveling around the North Hills. So I spend time at various libraries, meeting with students and tutors there, and kind of just being in the community. My contact information is here, but I do have some cards with me this evening as well, so if you're looking for contact information, there's no need to worry about taking it at this point. I'll be happy to pass it along. Okay. This talk this evening is designed to be your first step on the pathway to potentially becoming a volunteer with Literacy Pittsburgh. But I should say that if that's not your goal for being here this evening, that's not a problem. I still think it's great that you're here to learn a little bit more about our organization and the work that we do in this area. So we're going to cover 3 things tonight. And I should say that I'll plan to talk kind of at you a little bit for about 20 minutes, but then I want us to have a discussion together. So there'll be lots of opportunity for questions. Hopefully you're coming with curiosity this evening, and we can have a kind of more informal discussion at that point. So I'll start by sharing some information about Literacy Pittsburgh, who we are, what we do, and who we serve. We'll talk a little bit about literacy, what it is and why it's important. So literacy is not actually just being able to read. It's a whole host of skills that we're going to think about together this evening. And then lastly, we'll talk about how you can volunteer to support adult learners in your community if that's something that you're interested in doing. Like I said, there will be time for discussion, so don't worry about that. Before we get started, does anybody have any burning questions that they've come with this evening that they know they want to cover? Or are you ready to just hear first and then we'll see where we're at? Okay. Okay, so before we get started, I do have a very short video to share with you. This is a former student of ours named Keisha, who joined our program looking to get her GED. If you've not heard of a GED, it's a high school equivalency exam, so somebody who didn't complete high school and wants to get that diploma so that they can go on and do things in the workplace that they might otherwise not have been able to do. Now I'm wondering, I think if you just click play, it should work. If not, I can come down. There we go. I really like seeing her body language in that, how it changes when she's like reflecting on the journey that she's taken. And I will say that that's not an uncommon experience for our students who are working toward a high school equivalency, that they do come, and it takes them sometimes a long time. You know, sometimes those students are coming to us with a background of a certain degree of educational trauma. You know, there's a reason that they didn't complete high school. And it can be really difficult to get back into studying, but it's such an achievement when they're able to meet those goals. So we'll talk a bit more about that. I might need to, I think we're done with sound for now, and I think I might need to just click away before we can advance. Okay. So, I know that over the last few weeks at Northmont, you've been hearing a little bit about Literacy Pittsburgh via Pastor Ben. Can I just get a quick show of hands to see, before that, who had heard of Literacy Pittsburgh? Some, oh, quite a lot, okay. What about, so our name until about 4 years ago was Greater Pittsburgh Literacy Council. Had any of you heard of that? Okay, similar. Okay, so let's have a little bit more background about, oh, I've gone the wrong way, sorry, about Literacy Pittsburgh. I'm going to share a little bit of the history of our organization. So we were first founded in 1976, and we became an official nonprofit corporation in 1982. That means that last year, 2022, was our 40th anniversary, and we had this great year of celebrations. We involved students and tutors and former staff people and former board members, and it was just a really fun year. So in 76, our founder, a lady whose name was Mary Yardumian, she had come up to the Pittsburgh area from, I think, Florida is where she was living before then, and in Florida she had worked as a literacy volunteer. And when she came to Pittsburgh, she realized that there wasn't really any adult literacy programs in this area. So she decided to start her own. And she worked with a small group of volunteers. She lived in Mount Lebanon, and they were basically working from her kitchen table out in Mount Lebanon and just teaching people who wanted to learn to read at that point. But it didn't take long before the need for literacy education outstripped what Mary and her little team of volunteers was able to provide. And so Literacy Pittsburgh became an official nonprofit. We got an office in East Liberty. I think we were sharing space with the Carnegie Library at that time. We got a board of directors and a small professional staff. Today we have 60 people working at Literacy Pittsburgh, so we've really grown. We're the largest adult literacy organization in the region, I think maybe even in the state, and we serve over 5,000 adults every year. So we're really doing big things, and the work that we do helps people become better neighbors, better parents, better employees. We sort of approach our students holistically, so we try to help them in as many areas of their life as we can. Our students, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but they're in Allegheny County and Beaver County. And we have two main offices. One is at our downtown center in Pittsburgh, and the other one is in Beaver County. But we do have regional offices embedded throughout the region. The tutoring program is really critical to our efforts to bring our services to people's neighborhoods. So a lot of folks who live in the North Hills don't want to go downtown. You know, they don't want to come to a class that's downtown twice a week. It's not feasible for them. Maybe they don't have transportation. Maybe they don't have great childcare. And so being able to connect those students with tutors who live in their neighborhoods is really critical to our efforts to serve people where they're at. That's one of the really key benefits of our volunteer program as far as serving our students goes. But the other thing that I think is so nice about our volunteer program is that it connects neighbors with neighbors. So it enables all of us to work together to make our communities, our really local, like not just talking about the whole of Pittsburgh, but like talking about this particular area, to make that community a better and more stronger place. Literacy Pittsburgh's mission is simple. It's better lives through learning. And our vision is a more inclusive and productive community driven by access to education. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the kinds of education that we offer to our students. Our students come into our program in one of two ways. They're either what we call adult basic education students, or ABE students, and that's here on the left. Those students are part of our college and career readiness program. Those students are usually coming to us. Often they are American-born students, although not always, and they come to us with a goal of improving their reading, writing, and/or math skills. Sometimes that's because they want to get their high school equivalency, so they want to study for the GED. And sometimes it's because they're looking to enter a trade program or go to college so that they can further their career prospects. Then we have our English language learning students, or ELL students, and that's part of our broader project of immigrant and refugee support. So those are students who have come to the Pittsburgh area from different countries and are looking to build a life for themselves here. They need to learn English language, and they also need to learn US culture so that they can integrate into this community and get jobs and be successful here. Some of those students also are trying to become US citizens, and we help them prepare for that interview. So those are our two broad areas. What all of those students have in common is that they come to us with a specific goal in mind. They all have their own reason for studying at Literacy Pittsburgh. Unlike students in K through 12 education, they don't have to study. Nobody's making them do that. But they have a specific need or a goal that they're working to address. And our mission is to provide the learning, the skills, and the tools that they'll need to succeed in that goal. That said, although we are very driven by individual students' goals and needs, there are clear standards for adult education. So just like in K through 12 education, there's the Common Core curriculum that basically all schools are adhering to. In adult education, there are also a certain set of skills that have been identified as being essential for adults to function in today's complex society. We help our students develop skills in critical thinking, problem solving, and clear communication in reading and writing. We use textbooks and lessons that are aligned to these standards so that students can improve these specifically identified skills while they're also working toward their own individual goals. This is one of the key ways that we support volunteers who work in our program, is we train them in using these materials, and so we give them access to high-quality textbooks, to lesson plans that have been pre-designed by experts, and to ongoing support in using those materials. So that's sometimes a worry or a concern that people have when they think about volunteering in our program. They say, I don't have any teaching experience, I don't know how to write a lesson plan, I don't know how to deliver a lesson. But we really do have access to very high quality materials that we would teach you how to use and then support you as you're using them. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about us students. We have some pie charts on the next few slides, and I don't know how well you can see from where you are. There's some numbers that are wild. I didn't make these pie charts, but the numbers don't make sense. They're not percentages, they're not real numbers. So we can ignore those, but the proportions are still good. So these charts are showing information about our students in the last program year. So we work on an academic schedule, just like K through 12 schools, so we're doing like a July through to June. So this is from the 2021 to 2022 year, these statistics. So we can see our adult basic education students are here at the bottom, and our English language learning students are up at the top. And this first one shows the age range of our students. And the larger blue area in both is students in the 25 to 44 age range. And then yellow is, I think, 45 to 64. So you can see that the majority of our students are working age adults. So they're coming to us even though they've got busy lives. Many have a family, many have a job, some have 2 jobs. They're still choosing to make time in that busy schedule for learning. There's another similarity between our English language learners and our adult basic education students. When we look at the gender of our students, in both we have more female students than male. There's a number of possible reasons why that is, but we found that that's remained pretty consistent over time. And the last chart here shows the highest education level of our students. And you'll see the yellow area is students who join us already having had some post-secondary education. So we really have a very diverse population of learners. Just like our tutors, our students are coming to us from all walks of life and with a very diverse range of educational backgrounds and life experiences as well. This one is a combination of both. So the students that are coming to the ABE program are more likely to be in this category here, that they have less than a high school diploma. Also, sometimes they do have a high school diploma, but they need to brush up on math skills, maybe because they're looking to join a trade school program. A lot of our English language learning students come to us and they already have a degree. And in many cases, they're professionals in their home country. They might be medical professionals or teachers or engineers, and they're not able to pursue that career at this time in this country. So learning English can be the kind of first step on their road toward career success in this country as well. Right, they're mostly English language learners there. Yeah. Thank you. So that's one of the great things about working with adult learners, is that they come to us already with a whole host of valuable life experiences. So unlike kids who come into kindergarten and they don't really know a whole lot yet, adult learners come to us with a big framework of knowledge, and we can use that as a sort of stepping stone to help them acquire the new skills that they're looking to learn. Research has shown that literacy education is most effective when it's linked to existing knowledge frameworks. So we call that contextualized learning, and it's about putting the learning, the new learning, into the context of the existing frameworks that the adult already understands. So that's one of the things that our tutors and our volunteer classroom aides learn about as part of their training process, is how to implement that contextualized learning with their students. Yeah, Ben, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's a tricky one. So one way that can be useful is if you were, say you were working on math questions with a student and you used examples that might be relevant to their life. You know, like if you're working on word problems, you could pull examples if you were doing, I'm not good at math, I shouldn't have chosen an example of math. Yeah. Right, that's a great one. And that's actually something, my daughter is very into cooking right now, and we're doing a lot of baking together. And she's in 3rd grade, so she's starting to learn fractions. So if we've got to do like 3/4 of a teaspoon, I'm like, okay, here's your quarter measure. So even for a child, contextualized learning can be a part of it. Another example is with our English language learning students. So we have great curriculum that our English language learning students are using that's designed to teach them all of the skills that they're going to need. So they'll be learning reading, writing, speaking, and listening, as well as vocabulary and grammar. But sometimes their specific needs are not addressed in the textbook. So we often have a student who wants to pass their driver's license in Pennsylvania, and that's not in that textbook. So how can we use that as a framework for a lesson? So we can pull the driver's manual, we can be looking at vocabulary from that, and it's a great way to kind of really tailor the learning to that student's real personal needs and goals, but at the same time to use it as a basis for new knowledge. Does that feel like I answered that? Yeah, thank you. One other thing to mention is that adults, we all know this, we have complicated lives. Sometimes things go wrong and we feel like we cannot put one single thing extra. I'm always, I have to say, really impressed at our students. When they join our program, they commit to studying 2 times a week, every week. And I think about my own schedule, and I don't know that I would fit that in with everything else that I have going on. So I'm always really, really impressed that they're dedicated to putting that time for learning into their lives. But it is worth mentioning that sometimes those complicated lives do get in the way of that. And Literacy Pittsburgh has a whole host of support that we offer our students to try to help them overcome those barriers when they occur. So we can connect them with legal resources, we can connect them with medical resources, we help them with career services so that they can kind of make that next step for their career. And sometimes, if it's just really not a good time for them to learn, we suggest that they take a break, but we are always open for students to come back to us in the future. So we recognize their complicated lives, we try to support them through it, and we are sympathetic to those realities that our students are experiencing. One of the best ways that we can help students kind of stay in the game is with encouragement. And we don't get a lot of that as adults, maybe not as much as we would like anymore, but it's really important for adult learners who are making that commitment. We try to tell our tutors and our volunteers that it's really important to celebrate small successes. So, a student might come to us with a really big goal, like they want to go to college and they want to study something, but along the way there's going to be small steps. Maybe they master a particular kind of math that they were having a hard time with, and that's a real cause for celebration. And then the other way that we can help our students to feel consistently encouraged is by taking stock of how far they've come. So, you can say, let's look at what you were doing 3 months ago and now look at what you're doing. So we always recommend with our tutors that they spend time kind of recording and taking note of where students are so that they can look back and see progress. We've sort of talked about this a little bit already, but our remit is to support our learners where they are and with their goals. So everybody defines success in their own way. And Literacy Pittsburgh works to help our students figure out what success looks like to them and then help them move toward that. Okay, we'll have a conversation now about literacy, about what it is, what it means, and the way it impacts people's lives. We have a great need for literacy volunteers right now in our area. And because you're all here tonight, you are aware of that need. But one thing you might not be aware of is the fact that the greatest impact of adult education is not actually on the adults themselves, but it's on the next generation. So working with adult students is really impactful and really rewarding. And you're going to see, if you decide to do that work, you'll see really meaningful changes in your students' lives that feel great to be a part of. But you can also know that, in fact, the impact of those changes extends far beyond anything that we can see right now. So we know from research, from studies, that when adults are able to pursue literacy education, they're able to get jobs that help them to sustain their families. They're able to be more involved in their kids' education. They're able to be better role models for their kids. So it has a really lasting impact. Now I've got another short video. Can we give it a try? This is a tutor who actually formerly worked in the North Hills. And in this very short video, she talks about some of her proudest moments. She worked with English language learning students, and some of their really big, significant achievements she's going to share some information about here.
What makes us really proud is that all of our students have gained enough confidence and competency that they learn on their own and
That's one that I always really like as well. When a student tells me, I felt brave enough to volunteer in my kid's classroom, I just think that's like a really big deal, because it can be difficult to be around kids if you're not an English speaker. Kids are not always very forgiving, but I think it means a lot to parents to be able to do that. I'm just going to make it, I think I need to click again, excuse me. Okay, so that tutor did a great job at summing up, really, what it is that we mean when we talk about literacy. I said at the beginning that it's not just the ability to read and write, but it's really the ability to participate in daily life in a way that makes sense to you. Our work is not just about teaching new information, but about giving our students the tools that they need to produce and create by themselves. And literacy is really a constellation of skills. It impacts the way that an individual can approach their own goals, can develop their potential, and can engage with their entire community. So I don't know how well we can see these graphs here, but the sort of the sum here of what they're showing is that literacy impacts people on an individual level and at a community level. So on an individual level, people with higher literacy skills are going to experience lower rates of unemployment. They're going to earn more money, they'll have higher wages. They have better health outcomes. So increasing literacy directly impacts health outcomes of individuals. And they have fewer struggles with money management, and so issues with generational poverty are reduced. And then when we think about it on a community level, having those higher literacy levels leads to greater civic participation, so people are able to participate more in their community. It creates a more skilled workforce, which helps all of us. There's lower rates of poverty in the community and lower rates of incarceration, and there are stronger educational outcomes for the children in the community as well. So literacy really does make a big difference. Our volunteers play a really key role in that. So they help individual adults reach their goals and improve their lives. And they also make a significant contribution to the health of their community. I'm going to talk a little bit about our needs at Literacy Pittsburgh right now. So we are at a moment of great growth at Literacy Pittsburgh. We have a huge influx of students, particularly in our English language learning program. We're finding that more people are coming to Pittsburgh and making it their home, and we're delighted that people are feeling that Pittsburgh is a welcoming place to be and a place where they want to put down some new roots. But attendant with that is a certain challenge for organizations like Literacy Pittsburgh that are serving those students and trying to help them with the tools that they need to kind of make that a reality. So right now, we have over 400 adults who are waiting, either to join a class or to begin meeting with a tutor. A lot of those will end up in classes that are taught out of our downtown center, but in the North Hills right now, I have a personal waiting list of 29 students who I'm trying to match and find a learning opportunity for. 2 of those students want to begin studying for their GED, and the remaining 27 are English language learners. I don't know how well you can see these, but my English language learners, these charts at the bottom are just talking about the English language learners. They're pretty evenly split between beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The chart in the middle shows whether they prefer online learning or in-person learning, and there are more students looking for online learning right now. That's something that we transitioned to a completely online model during COVID, and now we're sort of tentatively trying to go back to in-person, but at the same time recognizing that online learning does overcome some barriers for some students. If they don't have transportation or if they've got small kids at home, online learning can often be a better option for them. But we do have students who are also looking for in-person learning opportunities. And then the final chart on the right-hand side shows when students are looking to meet with a tutor. So the yellow is evening hours, and that's because I have a lot of students who are working full-time jobs, and so the evening is the only time that they can meet up. but I still have plenty who are looking for morning and afternoon hours as well. So I guess this is all to say that there are a whole load of different students with different needs, and one of the really fun parts of my job is that I match tutors with students. So I get to look at the tutors' availability and their preferences and their scheduling opportunities, and I do the same with the students, and I try to put together a partnership that I think is going to be really successful. So there's always a student out there for everybody, I think, and it's a case of finding that right match. Okay. We will talk about this pathway to becoming a volunteer. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'm going to quite briefly go over the steps that you would go through, and then we'll have some time for questions. So adults who join our program choose their own adventure, or they choose their own method of instruction. Some students are taught via classroom instruction, and we have full-time staff instructors who are working at our downtown center and our Beaver office. And they usually teach classes of around 15 students at a time. Some of those classes are in person and some of them are online. Then students who are looking for a more individualized educational experience, or who would benefit from the more individual support that a tutor can get, will work with a volunteer tutor, either one-on-one or in a small group. And both of these options, the volunteer tutors and the classroom instruction, really rely on the help of volunteers. And there are two main ways to volunteer at Literacy Pittsburgh. The first is as a classroom aide. Our classroom aides work closely with the instructor to assist with learning in the classroom setting as needed. And that might mean that you were leading a breakout room on Zoom, or that you were working one-on-one with a student who needed some enrichment activities, or who needed some educational support to keep up with the rest of the class. The hours vary for our classroom aides, and we usually hope that they'll sign up for a commitment of about 3 months of volunteering. The other option is as a volunteer tutor. So our tutors meet with a student or a small group of students, maybe 2, 3, or 4 students, twice a week for 2 hours at a time. It says here that the tutor prepares lessons, and that is technically a responsibility of the tutor, but at Literacy Pittsburgh, we have a lot of support with the lesson planning. So honestly, the tutors are not really planning lessons at all. They can do, but we have materials ready to use. And then we ask our tutors to sign up for a 6-month commitment with their student, because that is often a good length of time for the student to kind of have made really meaningful progress toward their goals. All of our volunteers need to be 18 or over. I've had some people ask if we can have like high schoolers volunteer, and even though I recognize that high schoolers can be fantastic volunteers, because we are an adult serving organization, we can only work with volunteers who are also adults. Nearly all of our instructional staff have a classroom aide working with them. And as you'll see, this is our data from last year. Almost half of our students are taught in the volunteer program. So we would absolutely collapse without volunteers. We really need them for both of our, all of our students who are being taught will come into contact with a volunteer at some point. One thing that's not shown on here, but that I did want to tell you, is that in our last program year, our students who were taught by a volunteer tutor made educational gains at the exact same level as our students who are in classroom education. So we have to test our students all the time. When they join our program, we have to give them a test. And then after every 60 hours of education, we have to give them another test. So we see the progress that they're making. That's one of the requirements. Our funding comes from the Department of Education, and so you can imagine that with government, there's lots of boxes that need to be checked. And so that's one of them. But it's also important for us to be able to measure progress and make sure that we're effective. But our volunteer program is as effective as the program run by our paid instructional staff in terms of educational goals, which I think is really fantastic. If you decide to volunteer with us, all of our volunteers receive free training and materials, as well as ongoing support from either your instructor or your program coordinator. And if you're geographically located in the North Hills, I would be your program coordinator. You'll also receive ongoing networking opportunities and professional development opportunities. So twice a month we host a tutor talk, which is online, and all our tutors are invited to attend that. And then twice a year we hold a tutor conference. We're sort of shifting to an in-person model for that as well, and our conference in the spring will be in person. And that's a really great opportunity to meet other tutors, to share resources and information with them, as well as to hear from experts in the field. We recently sent a survey out to our tutors just to check in and make sure that things were going well. And one of the questions on there was that we asked them to comment on why they enjoyed volunteering with Literacy Pittsburgh. And lots of tutors talked about seeing students meet their milestones, seeing the achievement of their students being the thing that they really valued. Other tutors talked about the connections and the friendships that they forged with their students, and seeing that as really a valuable part of their volunteering. People are often nervous about volunteering with Literacy Pittsburgh. They wonder what special skills they might need to volunteer. The good news is you don't need any. So you certainly do not need teaching experience. Some of our volunteers do come to us with teaching experience, and that's wonderful. We always welcome teachers with open arms. But we provide resources and training and support, so that's absolutely not necessary. If you're thinking about teaching English and you're worried about the fact that you don't speak another language, that's also not a problem. Our students are coming to us because they want to learn English, and the curriculum that we have is designed to work as an exclusively English curriculum. So we couldn't possibly have materials in every language that our students are speaking. So your knowledge of English is really all of the knowledge that you would need. What you do need to be a good volunteer is patience, empathy, a positive, encouraging attitude, and we think a sense of humor helps as well. You'll also need a specific set of tools and resources which we will help you to acquire. And we could think of that as your personal tutoring toolkit. So when you sign up to be a volunteer, you'll sign up for 2 separate training sessions that will sort of give you those tools that you'll need to put in your toolkit. After you've been matched with a student, you'll receive standards-aligned material and teaching resources, as well as detailed lesson plans and ongoing support from your coordinator. So, if you are interested in volunteering, I'm just going to very quickly walk you through the steps. The easiest way to become a volunteer at Literacy Pittsburgh is through our website, which is at literacypittsburgh.org. And you'll see there's a volunteers tab, which is in red up there in the top right-hand corner, and our volunteer application is here. It's very quick and easy to fill out. It's just your sort of basic demographic information and contact information. It will ask you at that point for proof of your highest education level. You actually don't need to upload that at that point, but at some point we do need to get a copy of that. And it can just be a photograph of your diploma, or an unofficial transcript will be completely fine. The other thing I wanted to point out on this page on our website is right on the other side is the contact information for Roberta Hatcher, who is our tutor training coordinator. She is a great person to reach out to with any questions that you might have about our training schedule or what the process of training to become a volunteer with us is. At the very end of your online application, you'll be asked to sign up for your introductory training session. This is a mandatory 2-hour training workshop that all of our tutors do, all of our volunteers do. And you will learn about how to work with adult learners. It's really a valuable session. Sometimes training sessions can feel like they're a waste of time, but I've been through this one and it really is very good. Roberta runs it and she really knows what she's talking about. And during this training session, you'll choose whether you want to tutor English language learning or adult basic education, and you'll also decide whether you want to be a tutor or a classroom aide. And based on your choices, you will then select a second training session that will really give you those specific skills that you'll need depending on the subject area that you're going to work on. After that, you'll get assigned to an instructor or a program coordinator who'll be your point person going forward. So I'm going to finish with a quote. Oh, I'll try to go back to that. A quote from one of our students who was also in our ABE program. She was working toward her GED, and this is a student whose name is Christina. If you go on our website, you can see some more information about Christina. But one of the things that she said is she talked about the importance of Literacy Pittsburgh. She said, "It helped me grow into the person I am today. Literacy Pittsburgh helped me accomplish things I never thought were possible. My experience was more than education. They helped me to find my true self." So that's the end of my presentation. I wanted to say a really big thank you to all of you for being here this evening. I know that a winter's evening in January is not necessarily when we want to leave our houses. So it's really fantastic that you are here tonight and that you are willing to give your time to hear a little bit about Literacy Pittsburgh. I would love to answer any questions that you have. Oh, that's a great question, and I was supposed to say that. So we host 2 introductory training sessions every month. One is online and one is in person. There's actually an online one on Wednesday. So if anybody is really keen and wanted to get signed up right away, you could, I think, sign up for that training session on Wednesday. After that, there are 2 in February. So that's the last one in January. In February, our in-person one is in East Liberty. It's at the Carnegie Library in East Liberty, and then there's an online one on Zoom. So we move those in-person ones around every month, and we try to cover as many neighborhoods as we can. We just did the North Hills, because we just had one in Westview back in December, so I'm not sure when we'll do one in the North Hills again. But the Zoom opportunity is good as well if you don't want to travel. Yeah. That's a great question. So we, part of the way that we're expanding now is into communities. And one of the things that I've started in the North Hills just this academic year is a community-based class for adult learners. And we're running that class out of the McIntyre Elementary School, which is the ESL Elementary School for the North Allegheny School District. And it's a great opportunity for parents of the students. So the ESL school serves elementary age students, but oftentimes their parents are not learning English at the same time. So we're now running a class out of that school where parents can come in the evenings and be learning English. And we're working with a big group of students from Brazil and from Spanish-speaking countries in Central and South America. That's our primary audience for that particular class. What would be wonderful going forward is if we could sort of expand that kind of setting, so we could have more classroom-based settings for people in their community. So right now, the bulk of our classes are either at our downtown center or at our Beaver Center, and it's really honestly not convenient for students to come so far. One of the things that we've talked about with Ben is the possibility of having a family literacy class and maybe using the space for that. So I didn't talk about family literacy, but it's a small part of our programming at Literacy Pittsburgh is what we call family literacy. And family literacy is a program for parents and caregivers of kids birth through 2nd grade, I think. And it's an opportunity for adults to be in our literacy program, either in the English language learning side or in the adult basic education side. And while they are learning, their kids are also accessing high quality, age-appropriate lessons. So it's sort of like a childcare, but it's actually run by teaching specialists who are early education specialists, and the kids are receiving some instruction at the same time that their parents are learning. And then the other nice thing about family literacy is that there are also intergenerational activities. So there'll be a story time that parents and caregivers can attend together with their kids, or a craft that they'll work on together. And that's something that we're sort of thinking through right now. Our challenge is to, as we are expanding quite rapidly throughout the whole region, is to think about, where we put our resources. And in my ideal world, I would have classes running all the time in the North Hills, and I could serve a whole load of students and be putting people there and have childcare available. But there's only so many resources, so we're still sort of in the early planning stages, but that's definitely one of the things that I'm thinking through. Yeah, go ahead, Ben. Mm-hmm.
I think individually people will need to make decisions about how they want to volunteer and act.
Yeah.
If someone either here or in our church hears about it and says, that sounds great, I don't know that I can do the actual tutor,
Mm-hmm.
but he or they want to be involved or be helpful in some other capacity, either for the student or for their family
Mm-hmm.
or for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
What are things like that that we could be aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've kind of focused this evening on our educational volunteering program because that's a big need for us right now. But we do have volunteering opportunities with maybe a slightly smaller or less long-term commitment, those are definitely worth knowing about. We have a career and post-secondary mentor volunteer program where we connect students who are looking to enter a certain field, in a new career or in post-secondary education. We connect them with people from within that field, or people who are just kind of willing to talk to somebody about writing a resume or the job search process. So that's one way that we really value having volunteers, and it can be 1 or 2 times a month. It doesn't have to be tutoring. I do think it's worth saying up front that tutoring is a very intensive volunteering opportunity. As volunteering goes, I think this is probably one of the most intensive things that there is out there. We ask a lot of our tutors, and we are grateful for all that they put in, and we do our best to make it painless in terms of, we've done a lot of the lesson planning and we have really good support systems in place, so we try to make it as smooth as possible. But it's not for everybody. It's definitely worth recognizing that. Not everybody has got 4 hours a week to give to that. So there are sort of smaller mentorships like the career mentorship that we can connect people with. There's always fundraising as well, and just telling people about Literacy Pittsburgh is also really valuable. You can tell anybody that you've heard about this organization and here's the work that they're doing, and maybe you encounter somebody who's not an English speaker and you can tell them about the program as well. I feel like I might be missing something, so I might have to follow up with you about different volunteer opportunities as well. But they are definitely there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They would, unless they had, sometimes there might be a reason why they wouldn't, like if they knew of a student in a different area. So, for example, there's another church that we've been working with who have been doing some specific work to support Afghan refugees in the area. And some volunteers came to us from that church congregation, and they joined us knowing who they were going to work with. I'm going to work with this student. I've already met them through my church, and so I know I'm going to be matched with them. And so that's kind of an exceptional circumstance, but that's one way that you might not be placed in your geographic area. Or sometimes when you're going through the training process, you might be, our tutor training coordinator, Roberta, might approach you and say, I think you might be really good to work with this student who actually lives in the South Hills and they want to meet online, and there might be a reason why a particular tutor, prospective tutor, might be a great match with a student. So there are exceptional reasons why a tutor wouldn't be just placed in their geographic area, but commonly they are. Yeah. And then the other thing to say is that if you became a classroom aide rather than a volunteer tutor, rather than a program coordinator like me, you would be matched with your instructor. So that would be your support person, and that wouldn't necessarily be linked to a geographic area either. Although I am currently looking for a classroom aide for that class at McIntyre that I mentioned. That's one of my current needs, is a volunteer to support that teacher, because the class is very large. We have a lot of students attending, and the teacher is doing a great job of holding it all together, but it's a challenge. Any other questions that I can answer? Absolutely, and I should say that those decisions are probably a little over my head organizationally as well. So when I first came out here and met with Ben, I brought Laurie Como, who's our Chief Program Officer, with me, and she will be ultimately the one that makes the decisions about what happens where, from our point of view. But I know that she would be happy to come and talk again if and when those plans start to solidify. Yeah, absolutely. And the other possibility for the space is just as a meeting location. So our tutors and students who meet in person are always looking for places to meet. One of our rules at Literacy Pittsburgh is that it has to be a public place where tutors meet with their students. So we always say to the students, not in your home and not in your teacher's home. That's not allowed. And so often it's a library, right? Like they'll meet at the Northland Library or the Shaler Library. We're just building a connection right now with the Westview Hub, and they've said that that's a great location. I don't think any tutors and students are meeting there yet, but that's definitely open for it. But churches are also a possible location, and that's on a much smaller scale, and it's very individual. We have our tutors and students kind of decide together where they're going to meet. So I'm not saying you will meet at Northland Library at 10 a.m. We let them kind of make those decisions, but that's certainly a possibility as well. Mm-hmm. No, there are not. So I had to have my clearances. I don't know why now, but our volunteers do not have to. No, that's not required. Yeah, that's one nice hoop that we don't have to make our volunteers jump through. And the training is pretty intensive at the beginning, but it is very valuable, worthwhile material, and we try to present it in a way that's going to feel helpful rather than a burden.
So you're saying that Literacy Pittsburgh is very literacy council used to be just a name?
It was a rebrand, yeah.
The organization itself didn't change at all?
No. Although, we have been growing quite exponentially in the past few years and adding lots of departments. One thing that's really great right now is that we have a lot of student support services that we didn't have in the past. So trying to kind of be the barrier reduction tool for our students. But yes, it's the exact same organization. Yeah.
Some years ago, I had a fundraiser for CDLC, trivia thing. Do they still have that annually?
I don't know that that's annually. So we have a young professionals board that does a lot of fundraising for us, and they certainly do run trivia nights. Our big annual event is called One Big Table. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's actually really fun. It's coming up in March, so if maybe I'll send an email on to Pastor Ben and he can circulate it. But we host different restaurants from all around the city, and they're all restaurants serving up international cuisine. And they come and they make like sampling portions of their food. So you get a ticket and then you can just eat so much. And you're eating stuff from all around the world. It's really a fantastic evening. And then there's usually international music. So that's our big fundraiser, is one big table. But we do have smaller fundraisers throughout the year. Yeah, and that's, oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So where possible, I like to match English language learning students into small groups, both because it's effective, right? Like I can match more students and I can try to get more people off my waiting list and get them learning, but also because working in a small group can be really good for English language learners. They have other people to talk to, and the pressure of answering all the questions is not just on one person. So that can work really well. And then the matching consideration is about the level of the students, right? So they've all taken a test. When they join our program, we give English language learners a speaking test called the Best Plus. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and they just have to answer a whole load of questions. And each question gets, they get assessed on their listening comprehension, their language complexity, and their like how well they're able to get their point across. I say not getting my point across very well. I'm trying to remember, it's another L word and I can't remember what it is. And so those scores are actually quite precise. So we're able to match students based on their level pretty effectively. Sometimes students come to us and they want to only work with a tutor who might be female or with other students who might be female for cultural reasons, and we try to accommodate that as much as possible. And then, it's sort of thinking about maybe what a tutor's experience might be. Like if they've already worked with English language learners, then they might be a great fit for a beginning level student. But realistically, working with a student who has no English is a big challenge. So I would be unlikely to give a brand new tutor who has no teaching experience a student like that. That might be another consideration. And then, simple things like geographic location, when you're available to tutor, what the tutor feels comfortable with. So before I approach the matching, I always have a conversation with my tutors to say, how do you feel about working with a beginning level student? How do you feel about working with a small group? And trying to kind of gauge that. Yeah, that's a great question. So that's the first part of the training that our tutors do is the introductory one, and everybody's in that together. And that's kind of just about the different approaches to learning, to teaching adults. And then at that point, you decide what you want to do. So you either go to our English language learning training or you go to our ABE training. And so you're learning, it's very different, working with students who are working to build math goals or reading goals is very different than students who are doing English language learning. So we do also teach you what you'll need to know for that. But it can be quite a big process, especially if a student is trying to do their high school equivalency. It's somewhat complex. Like the GED is not something that we all are coming into contact with every day, and there's lots of different things to bear in mind. But I always say to tutors, you don't have to know everything right away. You can build skills and build knowledge as you go forward. No, I think you could go straight into GED. I think the skills are very different. So I think, and if sometimes tutors do decide to switch from one program to the other, and we're always really happy to support them with that. But we do usually ask them to do that Part 2 training so that they can sort of build those other skills. And the thing to say is that I know that on my list of waiting students, it looks like my need for English language learning is way up and the GED is way down. But with those students who are coming to us with a high school equivalency goal, it's really great if we can match them quickly. I really don't like those students to be languishing on the waiting list, because often even approaching Literacy Pittsburgh and taking those tests that they have to do is a really big step for those students. And so it's really great if we can get them learning as quickly as possible and capitalize on the energy that they're already bringing to their own project and their own goals. So I do see those students as being quite critical as well, even though there's only 2 of them right now. Mhm. We see everything. Well, the students are also unique, and it's really interesting. What we've been seeing in recent years is students who had a really hard time with online learning during the pandemic. When COVID hit in 2020, my kids were in kindergarten and 2nd grade, so they came home at a really crucial time of learning and then had to do a whole year online. But for a lot of students who were trying to graduate high school, that was also a really, really crucial time. And some students were able to handle it really well, and others just didn't, and didn't get they may well have been able to complete high school if they'd been in person, but the online learning environment just didn't work for them. So we're seeing a slight uptick in younger people coming into our program. Sometimes there are folks who didn't complete high school because of other life circumstances, and those really vary widely. I'm working right now with 2 students who are from a different country, and they did actually finish high school, but because it was kind of an alternative program, it's not being considered sufficient for them they want to go to college and they want to study to do nursing actually, and their high school that they have isn't sufficient, so they need to get their GED, and they're going through it quite quickly because they already kind of have the skills that they need. But they're now working in English, which is not their first language, so it really does vary. I don't think there is a typical student, at least in that program. Because our English language program is bigger, it's a little easier to make certain generalizations. And one thing you might be interested in is where our students come from. I mean, they really come from all over the place, all over the world. And I already mentioned that we have this big Brazilian community that we're working with right now in the North Hills. But our 3 biggest countries of origin right now in the whole of Literacy Pittsburgh are Ukraine, Mexico, and Afghanistan. So that's probably not surprising, right? Like, we know that those countries are likely to be sending people, or people are coming here from those countries. But we really see people from all around the world. That sounds great. And then since we are at an hour, I was telling Ben earlier, my watch broke this week, so I don't ever know what time it is anymore. But if you are, I know it's a Monday evening and probably everybody has things to get to tomorrow, so I'm happy to wrap it up and then answer questions more individually as well, if anybody is looking for more information. I do, yeah, let me grab those. Where are they?